This episode of Arrays of a Living discusses part 2 of life as an equation. This discussion was broken into 2 parts to arrive at my own mini-series, which I love. In our part 1 episode, I spoke to T plus W plus A. If you missed that episode, and these are strange terms to you, I urge you to go and listen to that first, then come back to this one, knowing the full picture for what the T, W, and A stand for. And here's the interesting thing and how this is all becoming its own organic thing. Interestingly, in that episode, the full equation was T plus W plus A equals H plus C. However, since doing that episode, I changed the equation to be T to the power of F plus W plus A equals H plus C. What I added from that part 1 episode is the F, which when listening to part 1, you will see that inclusion of F is discussed, but was not openly called out as part of the equation. However, in later hindsight, I realized that F should definitely be part of the equation, and F stands for feelings, just so you know. So go and listen to part 1 if you did not hear it, and then come back to this part 2. But even from making this adjustment, you can start to understand how powerful breaking all the coaching guidance into a life equation can be so powerful. In fact, so powerful that I believe this equation could even continue to evolve more as time goes on. Let's just wait and see. And that's the excitement of this and these 2 coupled podcast episodes. In this episode, I continue with explaining H plus C. However, before we get there, let's take a moment to discuss the bridge to H plus C. Focus for me is the equal sign, or rather, it's the bridge that gets us to H plus C. Or T's and or W's, and hence our feelings or emotions, they aren't always positive. That's part of the human experience, with a goal to master the flow of these expressions as they come. In order to master them, we must first recognize them. When we do, we get to accept they exist, then decide where we place our focus, on the positive or the negative. Now, many of us place our focus on the negative, except when we do that, it means out of all the thoughts running through our minds, and remember, we stated they were in the vicinity of anywhere from 6,000 to 80,000 a day. And even at the lower count of 6,000, when we think of going through all those thoughts running through our mind, that we look to grab the negative ones. Wow, that results in them speaking the negative words and feeling the negative emotions and doing the do that drives negative outcomes. Now, some outcomes are subtle, meaning that some suggest we are moving forward, and yet our hearts become heavy and we're feeling unfulfilled. And we go through intermittent happy moments. And then when the intermittent happy moments passes, we crash. Now, for others, they are struggling with the practical side of living, paycheck to paycheck. For businesses and entrepreneurs who are underperforming, meaning the businesses are underperforming. They're hustling for every dollar and life moment. They hate their jobs. 80% is the number I hear that are actually in jobs they hate. Again, another wow. One broken relationship after another. And yet I can look and I can say, it ain't all bad. It sounds bad, but it ain't all bad. Why does it sound bad? Because of the very feelings that links to that exponentiates the thoughts associated with those things. But it ain't all bad. And the reason I can say that is because those moments, those negative moments, those downsides in our life, they are all wake-up calls. They are our lessons we need to learn to change our lives, to set us in a different direction, in a right direction. How many stories have we heard of people crashing in life and then something miraculous happens and they find their path and then they are on their way? Look at Mandela. Look at all of these people that are through history that set back. Even the disciples were said to not be the most perfect when you looked at them, but their hearts were in the right place. These are lessons we need to learn to change our lives. And for those hanging on the negative, we must first see the clarity that the negative peg is where we hang our hats. We have to see that clearly, that for some reason we choose to hang our hats on the negative peg. Why are we choosing negative over positive? We need to ask ourselves that. What is going on in us, within us, to allow us to do that and feel comfortable with that? And when we come to that realization, we must do the work necessary to lift the hat and move it to the positive peg. But that's a choice. That's a decision that only we can make. And it seems simple enough when I say lift your hat from one peg and put it on another peg, except it probably isn't, because doing that change means rejecting your current state of comfort. Can you imagine, for many people, their comfort zone is the negative zone. Their comfort zone is the dramatic zone. That's for some people. You now instinctively do the negative. So moving hats requires the as within, so without overhaul. And that transformation starts from a decision to change you. And I speak about the as within, so without in part 1. So if you haven't listened to part 1, I would ask you to stop this, go and listen to part 1 and then come back to this part 2. But transformation starts from a decision to change you. Nobody can change you. You have to decide to do that. And you have to decide what aspects of you wish to change. And even when you decide about changing you, that is a decision in which you are choosing you, probably for the first time, but you're choosing you in a fundamental way. So it means acceptance that the change will not be instantaneous and that at times you will revert back. And when I say revert back, it means taking 1 step forward, 1 step back, or 3 steps forward and 1 step back, or 10 steps forward, 4 steps back. We all do that, forward and backward movement until we get really ingrained in who we are. We really start to transform. We really start to get a hold of our thoughts. We really start to get in touch with our feelings. And when you do, you must give yourself grace for the human experience, because sometimes on our journey, we will fall into the trench, and we've got to be able to get back out of the trench and get back on and dust yourself off. And we do that by giving ourselves the grace. Don't look at it as failure. It's not failure. It's a journey of learnings, of application, and of modification, of self-correction. What you will notice is that the undesirable behavior, in this case, negativity is what we were talking about, becomes less. And the other desired behavior, in this case, positivity, becomes more. You will also notice a change in people around you. You will attract differently. You will manifest differently. Eventually, your focus is hanging on the other peg. The hat has miraculously moved through the churn of growing, through the churn of getting in touch with yourself, through the churn of experiences. Non-judgmental acceptance is what enables us to place our focus on positivity. The grace part of that is also what allows us to make the transition to positivity. A non-judgmental state stems from unconditional love. Unconditional love of our own imperfections means we can look at the good and bad in us and choose the good. Essentially, positive thinking personified by embracing all that we are. And all that we are means really taking a frank look at ourselves and saying, I love this part. I don't mind this part. I definitely need to change that part, and doing the doing that needs to take place to change the parts you wish to let go of and release. And yes, at times that will be negativity that we can halt, discard, transform even. Focusing on the positive doesn't mean ignoring your problems, because we all have problems of one sort or another. Welcome, beautiful spirits, to the human experience. Welcome. We all can say we have problems. It's how we deal with the problems and how we look to address them that is the big fundamental difference. It also doesn't mean pretending that your life is perfect. That's a facade. There's no perfect life. There's different aspects of life and different aspects of living. And one of the things I talked about was part of that is getting to a contented living state, getting to a contented life, which then allows you to get to the happiness state. What is possible is a contented life that has its peaks and valleys. We ride the peaks and stroll through the valleys, on the lookout for the learnings while appreciating the experience. We act as disciples to teach our learnings using the skills we were given. We enrich ourselves to enrich others. We serve. It means recognizing that life is happening for you, not to you. It means choosing to see the good over the bad and practicing gratitude every day. Gratitude opens space for abundance to live. When your living state is one of abundance, where is the room for negative thoughts? There is none. So focus, and the bridge that gets us from the left side of the equation to the right side of the equation is all about how we approach these things and how and where we choose to place our focus. And then we come managing your thoughts, managing your word, taking the necessary actions, achieves the focus that helps us create H, which stands for habits. Actions are behavioral, and some will become automatic. Our actions can become automatic habits that build out comfort zone. They build our comfort zone, the habits. Another thing to point out is that habits are formed through repetition. Those that fit as habits are done outside our conscious awareness because they imprint into our neurology, our neural pathways. Not all actions become habitual. Yet many can lead into habits, and definitely the propensity to take action and become a doer can turn habitual. High achievers are action-oriented and are good at selecting those best suited to be habit-driven. They learn how to use actions to offset fear, setbacks, and drive achievements. Those skills are worthwhile to become habits, instinctive even. Asking you to manage the equational components TWAH is all about ensuring any actions serve you and the mission you've undertaken. And that is especially pertinent for the ones we automatically execute. Another word for habits are routines, which can be good or bad. So you need vigilance to ensure what you form from the left side of the equation delivers healthy routines and outcomes for you and others. The aim is to form new neurons around good, healthy things that serve you well. So when you keep doing what you're doing and you're not getting the results, or it's not helping you, then why do it again? Why keep doing the same thing that isn't working? Good habits lead you towards, and bad habits lead you away from. With bad habits, we tend to disengage. We tend to divest. We tend to posture lethargically and operate primarily in solitude. Think of gamblers, addicts, alcoholics, abusers, and the abused. Bulimics or anorexic. They all end up isolating themselves into solitude, all stemming from a habit that isn't serving them well. They think it is, but it isn't. And of course, the reality is that we all probably have hybrids of good and bad habits. What we then should ensure is that our good habits far outweigh our bad habits, and that they are moving us towards our potential. And even then, when we start to see a bad habit, even as it becomes less and less, because your good habits are going to start to overshadow your bad habits. But don't lose sight that when the bad habit rears its head, to recognize it and even then self-correct and try to minimize it even more in your life. So habits are very important. Now, why are they important? When we move to the C of the equation, we see that habits are important because altogether, all these things stands for character, which is what the C is. The C stands for character. Can we agree that the things we do and the habits we form build our character? Can we? If you disagree, I would be interested to know why. So I please ask you if you disagree, and I'm always open to those types of things. I'm not expecting you to always agree with me, but I would like to think that I trigger enough interest and thought that you can have good, enriched conversations and you can discuss it among friends and land somewhere. So you don't have to agree with me, but I would be interested for you to leave a comment if you don't think that habits form and build our character. I'm interested to learn your view, your perspective. Now, my premise is that thoughts, words, actions leads to focus, which then arrives at habits and character. And of course, this equation is an attempt to put some core aspects of what we need to understand for improving ourselves and our lives, knowing that at a deeper neurological and spiritual level, it is more complicated than this. And I want to really call out again, I don't want us to lose sight of feelings. That comes related to the T of the equation, which are the thoughts. And listen to part 1 to get how those two connect. So when we talk that at a deeper neurological and spiritual level, all of this is more complicated. What I will say is that my Divine Tactical Living Institute courses, along with this podcast platform and all my other live shows and streaming I do, help you to navigate the journeys towards living divine tastically. All that you want and can be lies with you, and the decisions you make for you. The way we think, feel, communicate, and act presents our character to the world. Does our character attract or does our character detract? The answer to that question matters, depending upon how you wish to interact externally with the world around you. This brings intention into the discussion, even though it is not factored into the equation. At least not yet. I may not yet have figured out how to factor it into the equation. But remember I said, right? It's not yet factored into the equation. But with excitement, I'm really excited about this concept and the prospect of this. Having put this down and made it firm with my podcast, I'm excited, right? That this means the initial equation can be expanded and built upon. Wow! Excited! So I haven't factored the intentions in yet. I have to see how mathematically I could do that. Another aspect of character is someone who appears in a story, movie, or novel. But Divine Tactical Living is becoming the artisan of your life. That's what Divine Tactical Living is. And it's becoming a movement. We have the ability, which happens to be a blessing, it really is a blessing, to craft our lives. We do so now based on what resources and tools are made available to us. So if your life is not going as planned, or the actions you are taking and the habits you have formed are not working for you, then it means you need to make a change in some way, small or large. Do you need new resources? Do you need additional tools to formulate new approaches? Do you need to expand your knowledge? And on and on and on. So here's an example. I had to get informed about wealth building and financial matters in order to attain new levels in my life. If I didn't, I'd be spending, making spending. I had to learn new ways to save. What did saving mean? How would I invest? I had to learn all of these things. My environment at the time could not give me that knowledge. I had a gap that, if not filled, would leave me at a huge disadvantage in life, right? I would be at a disadvantage in life. And what gaps do you have that you need to fill in 2023? And if you do have gaps and you have a sense of what they are, what are you going to do about it? And if you don't have a sense of what those gaps are, how are you going to find out about those gaps? I could tell you, I don't know. I'm looking around going, I don't know. One way might be to listen to Arrays of Living with Jen Drakes. One way is to listen. And as you listen and you think and you reflect, you might be able to figure out some gaps. Another way, let me think, is to actually support Jen Drakes or work with Jen Drakes in some way. The bottom line, whether it's me or someone else, what are you going to do about it? How will you fill your gaps? How will you discover what your gaps are? Here's another example. I wanted to serve you at an elite level, not just any level. There's a ton of coaches out there. There's tons of people out there that are coaching. I wanted to serve you at an elite level. So I've invested in myself to study neuroscientific principles and quantum physics and all those things to get to neuro-linguistic program, timeline therapy, creating your future, hypnotherapy, plus change management, plus all these types of things. And in doing so, I can now guarantee your result across 42 or more countries and have moved myself into an elite group of global master coaches. This is not to pat me on the back. These are concrete insights into my character. Action gives you habits and habits builds your character. Did I know this is where I would land when I started this pivot? No, absolutely not. I got here from taking action. One step at a time, driven from within and so without. Has those steps built character? Absolutely yes. The Jen that was 5 years back, 3 years back is not the Jen that is here today speaking with you and doing this podcast. The character that I have built in working on myself, in giving myself love, in filling up my cup, in leading with love is all for the better. And that better is to help you get to your better, to your magnificence. What I will say is the mind is more powerful than most of us realize. Because when you control your thoughts, you control the associated feelings, you control the expressions through your words, you control your actions, and you control the habits derived from your actions, and your character gets heightened, ultimately controlling your outcomes, leading to your destiny. Wow! Here's a big wowzy. Wow! And here's the thing. You have someone who believes that upon reflection of life as an equation, part 1 and part 2, you've got a formula to overhaul and uptake your world. It all starts with you choosing you and committing to start with your T to the power of F, or your thoughts powered by your feelings. Renew your commitment to self for 2023. And then go kick you-know-what for growth. And if you need help with that, reach out using the links in the description. Or if they are missing from the description, where sometimes I see that they are, email me at jen@youareworthmore.co. Jen with 2 N's @youareworthmore.co. And I'll be there to find out how I can help and guide and mentor. And with love, leading with love, as I always do, thank you for listening and Happy New Year. It's still not too late to say that. Thank you again for listening. Thank you for listening to this episode of Arrays of Living. And please be sure to follow me on Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube. You will also find in the description below my email address should you want to reach out, and I am happy if you do. And just to be sure, it's jen@youareworthmore.co, and worth more you definitely are. And lastly, also see the link that will allow you to schedule a meet and greet with me. And that's an opportunity for me to meet you and you to meet me, and for us to have a chat. And that would be wonderful and welcoming. So please hit the link and let's set up a meet and greet.